As the king's champion, Celaena Sardothien is dispatched to assassinate enemies of the king, a fact all those around her struggle to reconcile. But Celaena is keeping a dark secret from them. Instead of committing murder, the assassin aids the escape of those supposed foes. When word of rebel forces intent on disrupting the king's plans come to light, the king of Otterlin requires Celaena to find and kill her old friend, Archer Finn. He is not the only one who wants things from her, though. Dorian wants friendship, Nehemia wants Celaena to rebel, and Chaol just wants to keep Celaena safe.
Hey there, we're BookTok for BookTok with Jac and Amy, your book besties who take the novels you love seriously.
We embrace and respect modern fantasy, romance, and romantasy books written by women. And so it's in our nature to analyze these books as we would any other novel we might have dissected in school.
With our combined 13 years of literary academic training, we use our education to analyze and give voice to the reasons why you may love or hate today's popular books.
If you're new, let's catch you up. Each season, we cover one book and conduct an in-depth literary analysis. When we do a literary analysis, we take everything at face value and find ways to link the clues in the text together. We also focus on two literary lenses through which we review the text, providing two different perspectives of interpretation.
I'm Jac. I did my bachelor's in creative writing at Arizona State University with Amy, and I did my master's in comparative literature at Queen Mary University of London. I am using the feminist lens, and I'll be analyzing the text through hetero-gender norms and stereotypes, which I in no way, shape, or form reflect my personal views on gender, and will only be a tool I use to discuss aspects of this novel.
I'm Amy, and I met Jac when we attended the same creative writing bachelor's program, after which I received my master's in education. As usual, I will provide my analysis through a Marxist lens, where I'll view different power dynamics among the characters and the world itself. Sometimes it's obvious, and sometimes it's not. Food, metaphors, animal traits, positioning, and more all lend themselves to the Marxist lens.
This is our first episode discussing Sarah J. Maas's second novel in the Throne of Glass series, Crown of Midnight. In this episode, we will cover chapters 1 through 5. For a complete list of episodes and chapter breakdowns, be sure to check out our Instagram at the handle BookTok for BookTok. Now, so begins my struggle with you.
Should we change it to split?
No. I did it last time. I figured it out by the end of the year. So if no one knows what we're talking about, this is our disclaimers and trigger warning section. So before we dive in, let's talk about S.P.I.L.T. Spoilers, perspective, interpretation, language, and themes.
Spoilers. While our discussion is about Crown of Midnight, important context from the first three novels in the series will be discussed without spoiler warnings. This is specifically Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, and Heir of Fire. This is not a read-along for anyone who hasn't read at least these three books, and you will be spoiled from here on out. In fact, the first question we ask will spoil the entire series for you if you haven't read at least this book. So please, take this as your only spoiler warning. For all other spoilers beyond Heir of Fire and other SJM works, we will keep those to the Breadcrumbs and Broomsticks area at the end of the episode.
Perspective and interpretation. What we discuss in this episode are strictly our own and personal interpretations of the text. We do not speak for Sarah Jane Maas in no way, and in no way know her intentions for her books or characters. We also know our listeners have their own personal views and options and opinions, and we encourage you to share your thoughts with us because every perspective and interpretation is worth exploring.
Language. I should have changed this one. I'm gonna read it anyway, even though Jac tries to keep her swearing to a minimum for the sake of her mother. Explicit language does occur mostly by me.
And as we learned last season, that's
also
not true.
By Jac.
Themes. We also discuss some heavy subjects throughout this podcast that can include themes of sex, violence, abuse, depression, self-harm, and death. While we will do our best to give trigger warnings for the darker themes, we will discuss these topics when they are important to the text. Listener discretion is advised.
As always, we love keeping the conversation going because our listeners are so good at finding things we've overlooked or missed completely. You can share your interpretation of the text with us by posting on social media, tagging us in stories, sending us DMs, or submitting to the form on our website. We also post more exclusive content and host live streams for our Patreon supporters. You can find us at patreon.com/BookTok for BookTok.
At the beginning of every episode, we ask ourselves a question. But because this is the first episode of the season, we're going to ask our question for the whole book itself. And then we're going to come back in the last episode and really wish that we knew what we were doing with this question. So the question we ask ourselves, have the circumstances and outcomes of Crown of Midnight properly prepared Celaena to begin her journey as Aelin Ash River Galathynius?
I just got chills.
Oh my God, thank you.
I don't know why.
Because I'm great at talking?
You're great.
I don't know.
The question we're asking ourselves for this episode specifically is, do we believe the opening of Crown of Midnight is adequately set up by the preceding events in Throne of Glass, as well as, just the status of everyone and their relationships? Because there is a lot going on.
A lot of situationships here.
Yeah.
Themes we will see in this section include imaginary lines and evolving relationships, as well as misinformation. Now, before we start, phone's on silent.
Oh, excellent point. All right, we are in part 1 of Crown of Midnight, and it is titled The King's Champion. Now, we know who this is because we read Throne of Glass. This is Celaena and her new persona as a result of winning the competition in Throne of Glass. Identity is important in this novel in so many different layers. We already know. It's in our question.
We prepared you for this. Have you already failed? There will be a test at the end of this.
Oh, no.
Also, to our listeners, we should start having pop quiz.
We should.
I actually think that's a good idea.
I think we can post questions on our Spotify.
On Spotify, yeah. It could be like pop quiz.
That's hilarious.
I actually really like that. All right. More work for us.
Yeah. Something to think about later. How identity evolves as secrets are uncovered is also important. But before we can get there, we have to start where we left off, which are the consequences of Celaena winning the competition. Now, I love this first chapter of Crown of Midnight because I feel like it starts out as a classic horror scene. There are different elements of imagery that lend itself to this horror vibe. There are shutters swinging. It's a darkened manor, and there's a figure that slithers about, aka Celaena is the monster in the night. I want to point this out because there are multiple instances where Celaena is compared to a wraith. Quote, silent and smooth as a wraith. I'll get into another instance a little bit later on. Now, the true definition of a wraith is a ghost or ghost-like image of someone especially seen shortly before or after their death. Now, because I play a lot of video games, there are a lot of wraiths in video games, and they are traditionally like a woman who's been wronged or dies tragically. And that person despises the living. Why is it only female? I don't know.
We should have more male wraiths. I'm not saying kill them.
Yeah. There are some video games where they're genderless, but like
More
representation.
So, you know what actually kind of made me think of this, though, is as you were talking was the creature in the library where it's like lurking around. It also
slithers at some point, doesn't it? You're right.
At this point, though, we have the use of the storm, and it not only hides Celaena's actions of slipping into the house, but I like to imagine that it's hiding her true actions, which is not killing this man. And we are in a super distant third person for a reason. Quote, the king's champion pressed herself into an alcove at the thud of approaching steps. So this is not Celaena, right? This is the king's champion. And because there is that distance, we do not know her true actions. We are only assuming that she is killing like she's supposed to. And it's meant to do that little misdirect.
I love that point that the distance is intentional from like an observing point of view. I thought about also the fact that I don't believe Celaena's name is used in this chapter. Yeah. It's not used until the start of the second chapter. And because of that, it's also a signal to us that Celaena is in her king's champion persona and therefore forsaking her other identity to do this to do this work, not worth. Despite her kind of forsaking herself to be and embody the king's champion, I think the narrative is already giving us a sense of her inner conflict, which we're going to dive more into as the chapters proceed. And what it's showing us is that she's not completely without conscience. Quote, it wasn't her place to ask questions. Her job was to obey. Her freedom depended on it. It's a nice little reminder of her motivations, but also a signal of where she stands mentally. I'm thinking of questions. Nope, gotta shut it down. Can't be distracted by the questions that I have.
It comes back down to that distant third person, right? Like, she is disassociating from her actions so much so that she is not even narrating this scene. Now, Celaena's not the narrator. We talk about the different types of narration in the Throne of Glass series. It's all in third person. Sometimes it's more distant. Sometimes it's a little bit more close. But this is like aggressively not in her perspective. And that's because she can't even say the truth that she is disobeying the king. She can't even imply that she's disobeying the king. It is her job to obey. Her freedom depended on it. And yet that is the exact opposite of what she is doing, right? So the narrator is just as much out of the loop as us readers are. Now, the moment, oh yes.
No, I was just going to say great point.
Thank you. You know, was that the first great point of the season?
I think so.
Yay! A moment about descriptions and her surroundings before we move on. There's a couple of things here. Quote, her sword slid out of its sheath with barely a whine. And there's a couple other things, right? There's dark groans. The sword is whining. There's a lot of human sounds happening in inanimate. Thank you. Inanimate, happening in inanimate objects around her. And I can't say it for whatever reason.
How about non-sentient?
Non-sentient, yeah. It's one of those words and that's my first fuck up of the season. Prepare for more. But basically what I'm saying, though, is that that there has to be humanity in the objects around her, since we are not finding humanity within her.
I think that is a fantastic point. And the literary device is called anthropomorphizing.
Yeah.
If that's easier to say than inanimate, I don't know.
No, say it again.
No,
just say it once.
Anthropomorphizing.
Anthropomorphizing.
There you go. You got that.
It just other ends. I don't know. I'm done now.
Too many N's and M's. I get it.
Inanimate.
Oh, no, you did it the first time.
Inanimate.
There you go.
Hell yeah. Welcome to our literary podcast where I have a fucking master's and I can't speak. You know what? I wrote my dissertation. I didn't talk it.
I was gonna say, our brains and our mouths, there's a lot of pathways that could be interrupted between the two.
Yeah.
And then we get the last kind of horror thriller vibe scene where Aelin raises her sword just as the Lord of Nirral is waking up, and then it fades to black.
And then we get chapter 2 where Celaena strolls on up to the castle and she thinks, quote, actually there were few in this castle she didn't outrank now, and fewer still who didn't fear her. Identity is a theme, but so is status, because you can't have status without an identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because at the end of the day, though, she is Queen of Terrasen and she genuinely outranks everyone except for the king. She is equal to the king. So I feel like we're going to find a lot more subtle queen moments here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be flagging every single one.
I think that's a great point. This also made me think about, at the start of Throne of Glass, Celaena thinks a lot about how she's Adarlan's greatest assassin. Mm-hmm. And it was her trying to convince herself that she wasn't completely malnourished and her body destroyed.
Yeah.
But now she's like, I outrank everyone and they're afraid of me. And it's a reassurance for her how far she's come.
Yeah. True.
So now that Celaena's back in Rifthold, this chapter opens with Celaena's name, Celaena Sardothien. And I bring this up because of what we just said. She's not forsaking her identity as Celaena to be the king's champion. Now she is Celaena, she is not the king's champion. And I think that change between chapter 1 and chapter 2 is important, because ultimately I think Celaena was prepared to kill Lord Nirral if he didn't agree to escape. I think she would have had to follow through if he wasn't like, okay, I'll do anything you tell me to do. Because she had been prepared to kill him, she had to be the king's champion. But because we learn later, she is able to help him fake his death, she is more like herself. She feels like she's allowed to be more in her own skin.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we get a sense of who's present in the room. We are in the throne room, and the king, Dorian, and Chaol are present along with, other guards. Celaena observes that Chaol is, quote, always between her and the royal family. Now, she's talking about the physical positioning. Celaena's walked into the throne room, Chaol is there, and Dorian and the king are seated behind Chaol. However, the way I vigorously highlighted this was
vigorously. We did it on a Kindle.
I know. Let me pretend.
How vigorous can that be? The way you copy selected.
Actually, my not important. My phone Kindle and my computer Kindle will not sync, so I had to type all my notes. I couldn't copy paste.
I hate when that happens.
So annoying.
Oh.
Anyway, I did vigorously highlight / type my notes.
Yeah.
Which is Chaol is stuck between the royal family and Celaena. And right here, we are seeing the physical representation of that. And it's symbolic of his struggle in this novel. And Celaena knows it. Quote, Chaol might be her friend, might be someone she'd somehow come to trust. But he was still captain, still responsible for the royal lives in this room above all others. She knows this. Mm-hmm. She knows his conflict. Mm-hmm. And yet, as an 18-year-old young woman, not a girl, young woman, she deludes herself into thinking that once they start to be more intimate, that she can be more important than his duty that he's been living his entire life. And that is going to be their downfall.
So, which, like, arguably, he was already willing to give it all up, but, like, it doesn't happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And well, I can't wait till we talk about that section. I know we've had a lot of Chaol sympathizers. And I will say...
Creeping out.
Yeah. And I will say, as I was, like, re-listening to this going in and taking my notes, I remember thinking, is this the reason why we're upset with him? This?
Yeah.
This is why we're mad?
Yeah.
This is why Chaol gets shit? No, I can't wait to talk about it. Because this is great foreshadowing. Mm-hmm. This is top-notch foreshadowing. This is saying everything of what's to come later. This is going to be Chaol's quote-unquote fatal flaw, which he was already addressing before the flaw could really
present itself.
The flaw was there, but it could have been more flawed. Stick around, guys, because we rants in our future.
What I do know in this scene is that Chaol cannot look at and see Celaena. Quote, Chaol, whose bronze eyes were distant as he took the severed hand from her and offered it to the king. Like Celaena in chapter 1, Chaol is disassociating. He is experiencing this moment outside of his body. In order to stomach what he thinks Celaena is capable of, he has to become distant. So how is that a recipe for true love? Dun, dun, dun.
I see it.
Oh, okay.
Because she's being distant too. Negative times negative equals positive.
No. 2 wrongs do not make a right.
Yeah. But 2 rights make a left.
I think it's 3 rights, actually.
So this is a why I choose. I just want to talk about Celaena's thoughts and how she's viewing people here, because that's going to be another character flaw that we're going to see on her end, is how she thinks people view her. Quote, Dorian straightened, glancing away from the head. Chaol just stared at her. She's going to think that Dorian's inability to comprehend, to even stomach or tolerate her, is going to be like the thing that keeps him away from her, and that it's a lot of judgment coming by it. There's a lot of assumptions of judgment here. Same thing with Chaol. She's assuming a lot of judgment from him. Now, we're going to learn on both ends, there's a lot more nuance to it, right? Like it isn't just straight up judging. And I think that her being prepared on how people are going to perceive her, a lot of it is survival tactic, right? Because she can't have people perceive her as Aelin. She can't have people perceive her as this potential rebel. So she needs to get this assumption of everyone. And this is a character flaw that she'll have. I want to point out, character flaws are good things, because we got some new listeners last season, and sometimes they're like, she's perfect. And it's like, no, we need them flawed, because then we can see the growth.
Right. Every character, SGM writes, is flawed. I mean, otherwise, why would people have such a burning passion against Chaol? Like,
right?
All of our characters are deeply, deeply flawed. That's what allows them to make mistakes and us to enjoy a story about their growth.
An author should always be, if you can ask an author what their flaws are, they should be the first one to list all of them, and then maybe more you didn't even think of.
Excellent point. So to Jac's point, Dorian is shifting in his seat, and Celaena clocks it and judges him and thinks, he's got an upset stomach just because of a severed head and a hand. I'm sorry.
Bitch.
He moved. All he did was move. What if he had a wedgie?
Yeah.
What if he needed to adjust his privates? You don't know.
Why does it have to do with his underwear at all? Why are all of your examples have to do? He could have had a rock in his shoe.
That's fair. Maybe because I have a wedgie right now. Maybe that's what it is.
You can pick it.
No, I'm actually joking. Normally I do have a wedgie. Today I'm fine.
Happy for the update. Happy. Everyone, all of our listeners can rest assured that your ass crack is free of wedginess.
Free and clear.
Yeah.
Back to Jac's point, Celaena's feeling defensive. She's feeling judged by Chaol, and she is projecting that onto everyone around her. Quote, Dorian, who had never seen battle, never witnessed the chained lines shuffling their way to the butchering blocks. Perhaps she should be impressed he hadn't vomited yet. I found this moment a little odd, a little off-putting that Celaena is so aggressive towards Dorian in her own mind. And then I wondered, why would that be other than she is feeling judged by Chaol? I think it's also what we're going to...
Or by Dorian.
She's feeling judged by Chaol, therefore she's also assuming Dorian's judging her.
Gotcha.
But I also think that Celaena is mentally trying to create distance between her and Dorian. We're going to see later when the two of them are alone, she misses Dorian. She wants to talk to him. She wants to spend time with him, but she forces herself to draw a line. And I think right here, we're starting to see the results of that mentally, and it will only continue to be strengthened later on.
Yeah. If you think about it, this is totally her projecting onto everyone else because she feels like everyone should be judging her. And she's trapped in this truth that she's not killing all of these people, right? The truth is she's freeing everyone and no one knows that. And she is now the assassin, right? She was able to not be the assassin beforehand, but like in Throne of Glass, right? She was a competitor. And now she has to actually do these things. And I think part of it is definitely her projecting her own feelings of like, I would hate me. So why don't you hate me? I'm disgusted with me because you don't know the truth. I would be disgusted with me. But to your point, there's a lot more happening with Dorian because she wants his friendship, but she also doesn't know how to be friends with him. There's a lot of distance happening between them. We're going to see her dismiss him later on in this episode. And it's to draw a line that Dorian does not understand her. Like, he really does not, because what she said is true. He doesn't understand death and murder. He doesn't understand this part of her. Versus Chaol, she will have a good conversation with him about death and how to process and handle that. Unfortunately, she doesn't give Dorian a chance for that. And like I said, it's a hard thing for her to sit there and to be judged by everyone, or at least in her mind, think everyone's judging. And you can even see it in her own actions. Quote, she didn't dare look at Dorian or Chaol as she put the woman's hand back in the thick canvas sack. She can't face them. She can't face them knowing what she's guessing, what they assume about her.
Which is important for us because it reminds us of Celaena's true heart. She doesn't want to be a murderer. She wanted to be a healer as a child.
Yeah.
But this is an aspect of herself that she has honed in order to survive.
Yeah.
Now, the king of Otterland begins talking about rebel forces that he wants Celaena to hunt down and plans that he has that the rebels are interfering with. Celaena's mind instantly spirals, kind of like it was trying to in chapter 1. But she quells it by, quote, shoving the questions down, down, down until there was no possibility of his reading them on her face. This is a signal to us in case we started this book believing Celaena killed Lord Nerol, that there is a human behind the black mask that Celaena wears. She puts on a wicked smile, but that in and of itself is also a disguise. We need that right now as readers, because if we do believe that she's killed Lord Nerol, we need to know that she's struggling with it for her to remain human to us.
Yeah.
SJM is already setting Celaena and Chaol up with tension. We're already feeling that push-pull tug of war between the two. Here, chapter 2, Crown of Midnight. This, when I was reading this, it was an instant reminder to me that Throne of Glass was indeed about their relationship. They were numero uno couple on the list, not Dorian and Celaena. Dorian and Celaena were kind of the distraction.
Yeah.
We have to have caught onto it in Throne of Glass. Otherwise, this moment between Chaol and Celaena feels completely out of left field.
Yeah, otherwise, this whole entire relationship will feel like it happened out of nowhere.
Yep, exactly. Celaena, quote, avoided the urge to stare at Chaol's face as he gave her the letter, though his flowered? I think gloved fingers grazed hers before he let go. I love the imagery of this moment. Chaol is wearing gloves where Celaena is not. There is a barrier between them physically once again. This gloved hand of Chaol's is like Chaol mentally drawing a line between him and Celaena, which we will see over and over again. It's a barrier of his creation, not Celaena's, and that's important.
I love that. Good job. Second good job.
Now, there is a breadcrumb moment that I want to talk about here. It isn't spoilery for the series, it's just a breadcrumb for the way this book is going to develop. When the king tells Celaena to kill Archer, Celaena thinks, quote, he'd been handsome and kind and jovial, not a traitor to the crown so dangerous that the king would want him dead. It was absurd. Whoever was giving the king his information was a damned idiot. It's so ironic and it's so on the nose. It makes you laugh when you know what is coming. Because actually, Archer is a rebel, which we're going to learn halfway through the book. And Celaena thinks otherwise in this moment. I bring this up because as readers, we're still believing Celaena. She is narrating. We are in her mind. And even though she's often been wrong in Throne of Glass and will often be wrong here in Crown of Midnight, we like her enough that we trust her and we are just as gullible as she is because she's our narrator. We're taking everything she thinks to heart. Now, I point this out because it's important to remember how many wrong assumptions Celaena makes and how gullible she can be to believe why she hasn't figured out the truth about Sam's death and her capture, why she hasn't figured out the truth about Nehemia, and, a laundry list of other things. And I see Jack wants to make a comment.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. It's a hard thing for a writer to have a heroine, a main character who can't figure things out. Because one of my biggest notes that I feel like in every book is you can't have the reader be smarter than the main lead. Now, there's some times you can kind of forgive them. You can kind of say like, all right, well, I can understand it. And it's a fine line that SJM here is really walking of, okay, are we going to dismiss her? Are we going to say, yes, you are an idiot. How could you not see these things? Or are you going to trick us, keep it vague enough that we too are fooled and just as gullible as her? So I just want to point out that that's a fine line. And I do think that SJM does it well.
I agree. Having re-listened to the book before taking notes, and granted, it was only 70%, but the moments are there when you know to look for them.
Yeah.
But they are really subtle. She does a really good job, I think.
Yeah, SJM is very weird, where she is both subtle and puts it in your face.
Yep.
It is the weirdest thing, and I have yet to encounter that in another author where they are clearly stating this is there's a part in Throne of Glass where it's she has magic, very clear, it maybe not those exact words, but very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time you read it, it just goes right over your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she is masterful at it.
Yeah, she's very good. So Celaena is the queen of dismissing things in this book, and we are but her jesters following along. I would like to point out that this book happens in 1 month. And that's very different to the last book, which had a couple months, because this day one starts with her getting Asher, the notice to kill Asher. And the very end of this book is her handing in his body. And she says it was to the very day. And we are going to see a lot happen in a single month that in any other time I might complain saying, how does someone fall in love in a month? How does someone fall out of love in a month? How does all this happen in a month? Unless you were paying attention and you saw that book one is just pre-love story with Chaol and Celaena, you might dismiss the time frame of this.
Yeah, I agree. It's almost as if Crown of Midnight was the first book.
Yeah.
Or is the first chapter in the anthology, and Throne of Glass as the first novel is really the prologue. And if you weren't reading the prologue, if you weren't paying attention to the prologue, this journey is going to throw you for a loop.
Yeah. It's funny because it is breaking it down like as if the whole series was one book, where Throne of Glass is the prologue. This is like the first 25% that gets you to the hero's journey.
Yep. You drink some water.
Drink. What if I just leave this in and the sip so that our listeners can also sip with us? Sip.
As long as they don't hear us.
No. I'll just leave the, like, when we say sip, guys, we're drinking and you should drink too. This is the only podcast that cares about your hydration.
Now, Celaena walked in really, really confident, as she should, with swagger as an assassin. And she has put on this show of being a little bit wicked, a little bit malicious. However, at the end of the conversation with the king, she now reverts to, quote, submissive, yielding, gracious. And instantly when I read that, it made me think of a dog and how Celaena has been compared to a dog a lot in the Throne of Glass novel. Quote, Celaena looked away but forced a corner of her mouth to twitch upward to make her eyes glitter with the thrill of the hunt. It's like she's trying to be modest. And
I'm trying to twitch my mouth upward. Because it doesn't go up, it's a twitch.
Yeah, which is not very subtle at all. This moment is supposed to be, again, SJM signaling to us Celaena's true feelings with the description of her actions and the narration in general, which is becoming, I think, more obvious as this chapter progresses.
You think her smirking is a sign of her true feelings?
No. It's the exact opposite.
Yeah,
she's forcing herself to like smirk. She's forcing herself to do this, which means she doesn't feel that way.
It's opposite day. Anything she's doing, you can assume it's opposite.
Exactly. We then switch to Dorian's point of view, and he's thinking about how his father commanded Celaena to kill a man and his wife. Quote, Dorian had barely been able to look at either of them. He thought he'd been able to convince his father to reevaluate his brutal policies after the massacre of those rebels in Eelway before Yulmus, but it seemed like it hadn't made any difference. This is reminding us, as readers, of who Dorian is, and that really he is weak, he is incapable of making a difference in this world. Dorian feels powerless, and that is an important starting point, A, because it's true to the end of Throne of Glass, but B, because he's about to like skyrocket on a journey in the opposite direction.
A lot of funny things here. I'm currently editing the episode of Powerless where you're saying that Dorian is powerless, and we talk about Dorian having power and not being as powerless. And because he has the ability to make a difference. But this really reminds me of back in Throne of Glass when Celaena was getting her ass kicked by Cain, and he just was sitting there wishing he could do something. And, does Dorian have the power here to go tell his dad, hey, stop killing people? No. But does he have a power to voice saying, what are you doing here? This isn't right. Yeah, like there is something there. Does he have the power to go to Celaena and say, I am so sorry. I hate this. I want you to know I'm fighting for you, that this is wrong. Yeah, he has that power. He has a lot of power, but just like we saw in the first book, not only is he ignorant and not only is he powerless, but he's powerless to his own devices, like in his own mind, which is going to be fun because he actually gets powers in this book. He gets magic, which makes him inherently powerful.
And I think to your point, he's starting from a place of willful ignorance, of willful disregard, because there are going to be moments where he's like, I don't think I want to know the truth about Roland. I don't think I want to know XYZ. He's choosing to not know. He is choosing inaction instead of utilizing his position to motivate, to empower other people.
I want to keep in mind, guys, it's been 3 months since the end of Throne of Glass. This is the 4th target that she's had to go and try to kill. So this is the 4th time that Dorian has had to see this. There has been months that have gone by and he is still feeling this way. He is still feeling powerless. This isn't like the book just suddenly picks up from where it left off. Like a certain precedence has been established here, and that precedence is Dorian being unable to stomach anything.
Good point.
Dorian also notices her appearance. Quote, her lovely dresses and ornate clothes were gone, replaced by an unforgiving, close-cut black tunic and pants, her hair pulled back in a long braid that fell into the folds of that dark cloak she was always wearing. We know how much dressing up in nice clothing and nice dresses is part of Celaena's identity. She talks a lot about it. She loves clothes. She loves all like looking nice. And all of that has been stripped away from her because she has to put on this new identity that she has to immerse herself in completely. And it's also evidence that she is hiding who she really is. And Dorian is capable of seeing it and saying, wait a minute, this isn't the Celaena I knew. However, rather than putting, two and two together of being like, well, maybe she doesn't like this. It's kind of like she doesn't even wear her nice dresses anymore.
She's completely off her rocker.
She's in the unforgiving black clothes.
No. Dorian.
We wear black. I know.
Oh, Dorian. I have to... My throat is...
Take another drink.
I am. It's like I've never podcasted in my life.
I'm telling the listeners they should drink too.
Why does my throat hurt? I have done no talking today. So while Dorian is observing Celaena's lack of dress and her wearing black clothes, he also thinks, quote, she was a beautiful wraith. And when she looked at him, it was like she didn't even know who he was. So again, a wraith is a ghost. Dorian, in his eyes, is seeing Celaena as dead. Their relationship and the Celaena he knew is dead. Now he's going to try to resist that. He's going to try to be friends with her. But it's very clear to me that the wraith imagery is intentional.
This is the second time we've seen this now, the comparison to a wraith.
Yep.
And the thing is, it's also like contradicting to her beauty, right? I mean, there's a certain thing of like who she is dead, right? She was a beautiful wraith. She's a beautiful dead person is kind of like what he's saying.
Yeah.
Beautiful ghost. But it's Dorian, poetic as always.
Now, I want to suggest that this idea of Celaena being a wraith is in its own way like Chaol with his gloved hand touching Celaena. But in this instance, Celaena is the one that is creating the barrier. She's on a different worldly plane. She is not of his dimension anymore. And we're going to see how that carries out. In this instance, though, Dorian begins to wonder, for the first time maybe, that Celaena used him. Quote, he couldn't help wondering if he'd ever meant anything to Celaena at all. Now, I want to point out he is making his own drama. I think it's a valid concern, but he's causing this for himself.
I want to say he had this similar thought towards the end of Throne of Glass.
I think he thought it, but was like, I don't care. I just want to be with her.
Yes.
I'll prove myself or whatever.
I'll love her no matter what. I get his logic. I get that there's a certain amount of reason behind that. However, what do we know about him? He's an ignorant baby boy. He just does not understand things. And everything revolves around him. Like, he cannot fathom why she would not like him. He makes a freaking point right now of, I can't believe my father is making her kill all these people and that she's having to do this. He can make that logical connection, but he cannot bring that to say, oh, wow, maybe Celaena knew from the get-go that we couldn't work because she'd be doing all this stuff for my father. Like,
and I wouldn't like it.
Yeah, like maybe she wouldn't like it either. And Dorian doesn't even have to know about Celaena's true identity to put together why Celaena may not like his company.
Right.
It's easy.
It's easy to say, wow, my dad's a dipshit. Maybe she doesn't want to be associated with someone who's related to a dipshit.
Yeah. Dorian's journey is going to be his own ignorance, and then, him kind of realizing it and getting his head out of his own ass, essentially. His value is also placed on her deeming his worth, right? Quote, but he couldn't help wondering if he had meant anything to Celaena at all. He is spiraling with this, but if I didn't mean anything to her, was any of this true? Am I worth it? He doesn't say, am I worth it, those exact words, but we can infer that. And I think that it's not lost on me that by the time the end of the book happens, we can feel like we can see that he's kind of gained his self-confidence back.
Yeah.
But they're also friends again. So yeah. It reminds me of like, this is Ken. Ken's day is made when Barbie looks at him.
Yep. Totally Barbie and Ken vibes.
We now cut to Celaena's point of view, and she is getting rid of the head. Quote, Celaena strode quickly and quietly down the hallways and stairwells, taking the now familiar route to the castle sewer. It was the same water that flowed past her secret tunnel, though here it smelled far worse, thanks to the servants depositing refuse almost hourly. Now, we talked about in the last book and in many other books that oftentimes water is represented to be cleansing, almost even baptismal. And we said that a lot in her own little secret tunnels, that we saw what clean water coming down on her shoes on the stairs, dirty water in the river. And this is no different, right? This is dirty water that is taking away her dirty sins. This isn't quite baptismal water, but is still trying to cleanse and purify her sins, but she just can't, right? It's just she's putting a head down there. And it's only enhancing and bringing attention to her sins and bringing more awareness to herself and her own flaws.
Yeah, I mean, she's literally going into a tunnel with a bunch of shit. A, gross. B, this is what Celaena thinks of herself right now.
Mm-hmm.
She is just mired in crap. It stains her soul, and she's got a lot of work to do to get out of that.
Yeah, she does.
Now, unlike Dorian, Chaol can see past Celaena's persona as King's champion, or at least he eventually gets there. Who knows what he was thinking in the actual throne room. But ultimately, what I think SJM is trying to show us is that he is the one that knows Celaena the best. Quote, "Are you still acting like the King's champion, or are you back to being Celaena?" In the torchlight, his bronze eyes glittered. Of course Chaol would notice the difference. He noticed everything.
He does notice her. Like, he does know her the best out of everyone we've seen so far.
Right.
He knows her.
What I find interesting, though, is that despite knowing her best, quote unquote, he still has a hard time reconciling who she is and the deaths he assumes that she's caused. Quote, "It had taken a week for him to even look her in the eye. But what had he expected?" Okay, so he is still passing judgment on Celaena. She is right to think that, which, by the way, Celaena never gives Chaol the silent treatment for killing Cain, so it's a little bit of a double standard.
All right, I hear that. However, stop reading my notes. I can see you. However, how much is he horrified by her actions versus how much is he horrified by his inaction?
Great
We're
question.
going to see, huh?
Great question.
Thank you. Because we're going to see him in his own mind, and he does not judge her. He's actually going to be more in his head about how he killed Cain than what she's doing to these men. If anything, he's more horrified by the fact that she's not killing these men later on when he finds out. He is much more concerned about that. And he even confesses to her how anxious he is when she leaves. I took this to be his own guilt, that every time she leaves, he is stressed about her. He is realizing more and more how he feels about her, and being stressed about her, being worried about her is a certain amount of defying the king, right? Like, that he shouldn't be doing this. So when he doesn't look at her, I feel like it's him almost not being able to look at her, thinking, I have failed this woman that I care about so much.
Yeah, I mean, and he was near a breaking point. He was packing up his horses. He was ready to go find her because he was worried she might have been caught.
And if there's anything we know about Chaol, is that he will find the action. Even when, like we were saying, when Cain was kicking Celaena's ass and Dorian did nothing, Chaol did go to the edge of the fighting of the line, did go to the chalk, and did talk her up. So this is a man who, even in a moment where there is nothing that he feels like he is able to do, he will find some kind of action. And he is truly without action right now.
That's a great point.
Thank you. Turns out I'm a huge Chaol apologist right now.
The first time I read this series, I was always Team Chaol. Not in the I want him to be with Celaena, but
yeah, but like, hey, he's not that bad.
He's a flawed character who learns a lesson. He actually is good at his core.
He is good at his core, and he has always said what he means to Celaena. He has always been honest with her, except for the time that he wasn't. But that's not, but like, it wasn't a lack of honesty. It was following orders.
Right.
And he has always said that he is the captain of the guard. He is honorable. He is an honorable guy, to a fault sometimes. So he confesses, right? And he feels guilty. And Chaol is also part of her seeking cleansing. Quote, Chaol stepped behind her, still staring at the filthy water where the sack was undoubtedly now caught in the current, drifting out into the Avery River and the sea beyond. He is seeing her sins float away. He is with her in that cleansing. Now, the water is still dirty. And like we were saying, water can represent like cleansing, baptismal, or in this case, the dirty water is representing her sins. And this is a very vulnerable time for her because her sins, the dirty water, the head is being carried away. Now, what is being carried away is into a sea which will ultimately cleanse it. It's not going to be as dirty as this flowing dirty water at this moment. So there is potential of it being, forgiveness happening. But I think it's very poignant that he is there with her in the pit of the castle with all the shit running by. And he is standing there with her, looking at her quote unquote sins and able to look her in the eye.
It's a great point.
Thank you. I can't wait to post clips of this on TikTok and see
It
what
should just
people
be a
feel about it.
sequence of me saying, great point, great point, great point.
And be like, what was this point? So we can expect what Chaol is telling her to be true for many reasons. But I think that SJM does it also with the environment. We can see how she's setting him up for truth. Quote, "When you go away," he said, the distant torchlight illuminating the rugged plains of his face, "I have no idea what's happening to you." The use of space and the use of light is meant to show the illumination of truth. The light is literally on him in this dark place, and his truth is that beam of light in Celaena's consciousness. Thank you. I'm coming in with the heavy hitters.
Pew, 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 pew.
Can I say words? No. Can I make points? Yes.
So this brings me to a question. Do we believe Chaol's honesty / the intimacy of this moment and his relationship with Celaena so early in Crown of Midnight? As Jack has just told us, he's telling her he's worried about her. And every time he leaves, he goes out of his mind. He was about to leave to find her. He pulls her into a hug, which she doesn't resist. And then they walk arm in arm, and he doesn't let go. Let me also say that when he pulls her into a hug, quote, his nose grazed the nape of her neck.
Nose on a neck does not get hotter than that.
That is so intimate.
That is so intimate.
That is so intimate. Like, and
he's smelling her too. It's not just that, but like he's inhaling her as also.
I mean, on the rare occasion that my partner does that for me, it's like chill inducing because it's like, ooh, you're all the way up in there. This is not something friends do, or at least they should not.
No, I would never.
Please don't.
No, I never want. I don't want my nose anywhere near your neck. It is when it happens to me, when a guy like does that, it is game over. It's like suddenly I'm just like, what standards am I holding? They're gone. Take me now.
Standards.
Yeah. All that this shows now is that there is, like Amy was saying, a very intense intimacy between these two characters. We're only on chapter 2 still, guys. So, I think that this is SJM really setting the precedence of saying these two are going to fuck. This is her saying like they're going to get together. They're basically a situationship. They spend all their time together. That's what we're going to get in these initial chapters, is that they constantly worry about each other. They spend all their time together, and he sniffs her neck. While Dorian can't even look her in the eye or really talk to her about his own concerns. And he questions her, like, versus like Chaol is able to like find that physical and emotional intimacy with him.
Which shows Chaol's in it. He wants to be in it, right? He really wants to commit. Dorian was always a fuckboy.
Yeah.
And he's just mad right now that he didn't get his way.
Yes.
I love Dorian, guys. I really, really do. He's just a little brat right now.
He really is.
Now, in my mind, Chaol and Celaena are not the same height. In my mind, her head comes up to his chin.
Okay.
So how can he hug her and put his nose in the nape of her neck?
Oh, it happens.
Like,
yeah, no, it happens. Get Emma in here.
She's not that much shorter than me, though.
Go put on heels.
Yeah, but I just feel like he would have to be like ass out, hunched back, trying to like bend over.
Maybe, but like, I don't know.
I don't think that there is a graceful way for them to have done this.
Well, do we know how tall he is?
I don't.
Do we know who are the guys that she's been with?
Dorian.
Chaol.
Rowan.
How tall is Rowan? I know how tall Sam is.
How tall is Sam?
6 feet under. I saw that on a TikTok. I can't even claim that was mine.
Okay, Rowan is 6'4".
Okay, so I think it's fair to say that Chaol's probably like 6 foot.
6'1".
Okay, and Celaena?
We're about to find out.
Take a sip, guys.
Aelin is listed
probably like 5'6" or something.
Yeah, my height. 5'6", 5'7". Okay, so he's not a full head taller than her.
Yeah.
But least 6 inches taller than her.
Imagine the stairs are working in their advantage.
I struggle.
Okay, do you know what we need? We need you and Randall to hug.
Okay, that's fine. I usually go up on my tiptoes to hug him.
Yeah, so she's probably on her tiptoes.
Yeah, he would still have to hunch over to get his nose in her neck.
No one is describing that it's a sexy position to be in. It's a sexy thing to feel.
All I'm saying is logistics.
God, it would be so much easier if I was dating someone and I could just be like, I'm gonna take some photos.
Okay, I will get on a ladder, and then Emma and I will reenact this.
Lovely. Thank you. Let me know how it goes.
I will.
Back to the notes. Before we get into Celaena's revelation, right, that she's about to tell us that she's actually not killing everyone, I want to note that she takes a bath. And now her sins have been cleaned, and we're able to get the truth of what she's actually been doing.
SJM and her baths.
Yep. She loves a bath, metaphorical bath. That means a lot.
Yep, it sure does. So, for whatever reason, Celaena is unwilling to or has not yet realized how much Chaol feels for her, because there are going to be times where she is on the verge of recognizing her feelings for him, but she's always backing away from it. Why? Why is she not just taking the plunge? Because she obviously was willing to with Dorian. Why is she so hesitant with Chaol? And we have to explain it with the fact that she is in a life or death situation. She is very confused and has to keep a lot of secrets. And so she's going to hold everything, all of her cards, close to her vest or chest. Quote, Chaol hadn't doubted her story as he inquired about her mission. She couldn't quite decide if that made her feel smug, disappointed, or outright guilty. Again, she is confused. She doesn't know how to feel right now. This is when we learn that she has failed to kill every assignment she's been given by the king in the last 2 or 3 months, and instead has offered escape. Quote, she prepared herself for the kill, but when she realized whose agenda she was aiding, she couldn't do it. She tried to bully and coax and bribe herself into doing it, but she couldn't. This is interesting because, yes, we know ultimately Celaena's compassionate. She's going to do the right thing, but she tried to be bad. She tried to be bad because she knew it was in her best interest. She just ultimately couldn't follow through. Now, is the reveal too soon? We are still in chapter 2.
And we do ask that of our listeners, which we'll talk about more later.
Yes, we will talk about what our listeners thought about this at the end of the episode in Breadcrumbs and Broomsticks. Now, personally, Anne, I almost would have liked to have seen the reveal come when she tells Chaol for the first time, so that we could maybe feel some explosive energy the way Chaol does it. Like, Chaol is like, oh my God, you're crazy. You're going to die now. Whereas for us, we could be like, oh, she was good all along. Anyway.
I feel like it has to happen because of her interaction with Nehemia and Nehemia alone.
Okay, great point. Okay, let's save that for when we get to Nehemia. Actually, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it now. Let's talk about it now.
I mean, we're about to get to Nehemia if we wanted to wait.
That's true.
We'll circle back.
Yeah, we'll circle back. What I will say, though, is that from a writing perspective, if you believed all the bullshit Celaena's been doing up until this point, Celaena might not come across as a sympathetic character. She might not be someone that the readers want to follow into the rest of this novel. So I understand from a writing perspective that the reveal now achieves what all authors want to achieve. They want you, the reader, to like the character and want to follow the character. Otherwise, some readers, especially when we think about the fact that this is a YA book, might struggle to reconcile the King's Champion with the Throne of Glass Celaena and dislike who she is.
Yep, absolutely.
Also, another point from a writing perspective, Celaena's already keeping a bigger, badder secret. And quite frankly, in writing, I don't think you can do both. I think it would be a major cop-out to keep both secrets for so long.
Yes.
So what is important now is that we are learning and remembering Celaena is accustomed to leading a double life. Knowing that she's capable of doing that with everyone around her, thinking that she's assassinated these people, makes it more believable when we find out her true identity. And then I felt like there were so many meta points in this chapter, but the last one I'll leave off with is the underlying question for the entire series. Celaena thinks to herself, quote, "The king had enslaved the entire continent. What more could he do?"
A lot more.
A lot more. I need to take a sip.
Listeners, take a sip. I hope listeners really do drink their water when they, and now that I'm going to incorporate this.
I hope so too. We are now in chapter 3, and Celaena is dreaming that Cain and the Ritterak are chasing her. While she is sprinting as fast as she can, Cain has a, quote, stalking gait that makes it very easy for him to stay close behind her, and the Ritterak lumbers. Unlike Celaena, these words of stalking gait and lumbering that are associated with Cain and the Ritterak's movements seem unhurried and clumsy. And to me, that makes them even more terrifying because she's running as fast as she can. So I just thought it was a nice little nightmare sequence.
Yeah.
On SJM's part.
I like this nightmare sequence because Cain, quote, whispered her name, her true name, and she screamed. And remember, Cain was essentially the king's champion. The king thought Cain did everything he can to make Cain be the champion.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of put together that if Cain equals king, then it's Celaena running away with her true identity from the king.
That's a great point.
After Celaena wakes up, she holds Fleetfoot and thinks, quote, "It's over." And she says it 2 times, like in this sequence, right? She says it's over twice. But it feels like the second, for me personally, "it's over," has more to do with her identity. Like she's almost saying, nope, like I am not Aelin. It's over. This is not, there's no world I can go back into that identity. It's over.
I think that's a great point. I didn't think about it, but I can see that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking for any little Aelin hint here.
Yeah.
Now, in book 1, speaking of my Aelin hints, in book 1, we talk about Fleetfoot being a representation of Celaena sometimes, and I feel like we're seeing this again. Quote, "Even though she wasn't yet fully grown, the dog was already abnormally large. Dorian had never said what breed exactly he suspected her mother had mated with. Given Fleetfoot's size, it could have been a wolfhound or an actual wolf." I feel like that's a great way of saying we don't know how much power that she's going to have later on. We know that her grandmother was Fae, but there's still a lot of question into her own lineage and what's capable, and that she could be full wolf. You know what I mean? So there's just as much question to Fleetfoot right now as there is to Celaena's identity and heritage.
It's a great point. We then see Celaena and Nehemia together for the first time in this novel. And I wrote in my notes a question, which was, is there symbolic significance to the fact that they only see each other at dawn? Because I feel like SJM always uses dawn, sunset, these things very symbolically. So knowing that Nehemia sees the rebels at night, which is something we're going to learn later, it's under the cover of darkness, it's, in disguise. I think there is significance in the fact that Celaena only sees Nehemia at the light of dawn, representing that Nehemia has 2 sides of her. She has the dawn side and the dark side, and Celaena is only acquainted with one of those.
Absolutely. I think Nehemia is also almost trying to get Celaena to see the light, the new light, like getting Celaena to be like, hey, let's start the day fresh with maybe wanting to save some rebels. Just a little positive morning affirmations. And Celaena isn't doing what Nehemia wants her to do, right? Like she's literally not getting what she's trying to do. And I feel like when it comes to light with Chaol, like represents a lot of truth with light, I don't feel like that's going to be the case with Nehemia. Like you said, Nehemia's truth happens in the dark. Nehemia's truth happens at night when she's working with the rebels. Nehemia's truth happens at night when she's working with Elaine. Yeah, not Elaine. Elena.
Elena.
Elena. Nehemia's truth happens away from light. And I feel like that's her kind of like not a double standard, but I think she's trying to maybe metaphorically manipulate Celaena. This is all metaphors and interpretation, guys.
All metaphors. We could also say, we'll talk about later in the book, how Nehemia's choice, knowingly going to the king, and ultimately that's when she is killed. Nehemia is sunsetting. Her journey is sunsetting while Celaena's journey, or Aelin's journey, is rising with the dawn. And this is the only moment where they converge.
Yes.
I just gave myself goosebumps.
Oh, good job.
Celaena wonders to herself during their conversation, quote, did the king know that the princess was one of the spies he'd mentioned? He couldn't, or else he'd never trust Celaena to be his champion, not when their friendship was widely known. Another instance of just a bad assumption on Celaena's part. She's a little bit naive, and I think we're a little bit gullible too.
Yeah. It doesn't help that there's two conversations essentially going on. It's the conversation that Nehemia is having, and there's the conversation that Celaena's having. Because Nehemia asks Celaena about the assassinations that the king has just assigned her with to go kill off the rebels. And Nehemia says, quote, and you're to kill them all? Nehemia's creamy brown face paled slightly. She's worried about her own plans.
Mm-hmm.
She's worried about everything that she's put together falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe part of it is feeling guilty about Celaena having to kill, but her concern doesn't really read, at least when you know the truth, as you're going to kill these innocent people.
Mm-hmm.
It comes off as, oh fuck, my plans are going to get messed up.
Right. Or the people I'm associated with are going to get caught in the crosshairs.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it definitely is more a self-interested concern.
Yep, absolutely.
Now, talking about the king's plans, Celaena isn't very interested in learning what those plans are of the king's. Quote, she wasn't even sure if she really wanted to know what the king was up to, let alone share that information with anyone else. It was selfish and stupid, perhaps, but she couldn't forget the warning the king had given the day he crowned her champion. If she stepped out of line, if she betrayed him, he would kill Chaol, and then Nehemia, and then the princess's family. Celaena knows the risks associated with what she's doing. That is why she's keeping the secret. She's keeping it from Chaol and from Nehemia to keep them safe, to keep herself safe. So, knowing that, is this not the same as when later Chaol is not going to tell Celaena about the threat to Nehemia because he wants to keep them safe? Is there a double standard at play here?
Yes. The answer is yes.
It
literally was what I said in my notes, where I was just like, these double fucking standards. Celaena even says to herself, quote, all of this, every death she faked, every lie she told, put them at risk. She continues to put them at risk over and over again with her actions in order to keep her safe, in order to keep everyone else safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chaol doesn't tell Celaena about Nehemia, mainly because he doesn't know if it's true or not, right? Like, he's actually not entirely sure what degree it is because he's never heard of these threats before.
Right. He almost thinks the king is lying.
Yeah,
kind of.
Because he kind of knows that the king is being a little shit right now and hasn't been completely honest with him. So Celaena having this knowledge, and her actions are putting them at danger, versus Chaol's inactions, you could argue, put them at danger.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like what Chaol did was withhold information he hadn't verified. What Celaena is actively doing is putting them in danger over and over and over again.
And knowingly so.
And not telling them.
Yeah. Not letting them choose if they want to be associated with that.
They deserve to know what she's doing.
And this is a trope I think we see in a lot of stories. We see it over and over again with Aelin. Right now, it's novel in the sense that this is the first time we're really seeing it with Celaena. We have to pose the question, if we continue the series, do we get tired of it?
Yes.
Do we get tired of it across the entire, catalog of literature?
Can I have one more complaint before you start?
Yeah.
Sorry, one more complaint. She doesn't even need to tell them that she is not killing everyone. All she needs to tell them is the king threatened your life.
Mm-hmm.
If I mess up.
Mm-hmm.
That is literally, I just want to pull back the curtains a little bit more and just say, hey, she doesn't even need to tell them that she's saving these lives. They just need to know that their life's at risk because the king threatened them, which is I feel like a very easy thing to tell someone.
Right. And in that way, her not telling them, hey, the king has threatened your life if I don't do this right, to me is equivalent of Chaol withholding, hey, there's an unknown threat against Nehemia. Nehemia, I don't know if it's real.
Yeah. The difference is we know the king is a real threat.
Right. It's like more people should be more mad at Celaena.
I agree. Sorry, go ahead, read your note. I'm so sorry. I had to.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Let me read this quote. because I think it encapsulates everything for us. Quote, whenever the princess or Chaol or even Dorian looked at her like that in a judgy way, it was almost too much to bear. But they had to believe the lies too, for their own safety. She's convincing herself that what she is doing is right. And it reminds us of Celaena's selfishness, and it is setting her up for the rest of her journey in this novel and in this series. From wanting to do nothing with rebels to wanting to destroy the king, but always, always, always withholding information.
Yeah. And also keep in mind, initially, from what we've heard, this book series was not supposed to be the whole epic 7-book series. And she being Celaena, was supposed to end with Chaol. Like that was originally with Dorian, then it was with Chaol. But I feel like we're getting evidence here of Chaol was always meant to be forgiven. Because if SJM had decided, and Rowan was still in the picture when she outlined these, but Rowan was meant to be just purely a mentor. And if she were to have gotten back together with Chaol, there is a lot of room for forgiveness here.
Yeah, there is. And I feel like that room remains even after Nehemia dies.
She even forgives him. Like, she even understands at one point.
Like, yeah, there was a lot going on to make sure we didn't hate Chaol.
Yes.
It's interesting how people continue to hate Chaol.
I am literally waiting for the moment that he does something that because even sending her away makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
I don't get it. He's actually helping her. But okay. One of my notes, I don't know why I have it here, but I just said that more friends should be more supportive of their friends being an assassin, and that if you ever decided to become an assassin, you don't even have to lie to me. I would have your back so hard.
I know that you would help me live that double life. You would be crucial to my success.
Thank you. Some would say assist. You know? Like, as we were saying earlier, there's 2 different conversations that are happening. But even with Nehemia, I feel like she's having 2 different conversations within Celaena. So really there's 3 conversations happening. Nehemia wants to save her people. That is a must. She also wants Celaena to want to not to kill people and to want to save her rebels, to save her people. And that's going to be one of their biggest arguments before Nehemia dies, is going to be like, why are you not taking any action? And at this point, Nehemia tells her, quote, apparently he, the king, is too busy finding people for you to kill. Celaena blushed at the harshness in Nehemia's tone. That's not how you do it. Like, that's not how you guide your friend to a truth. And it's very frustrating. I have a lot of issues with Nehemia in this book and her as a character, which then makes me have issues with SJM, because why are you making the one person of color in this entire book series so far be the one to kill themselves and to kind of suck while doing it? So I want to emphasize that I recognize that that is a huge aspect, and it is extremely fucked up of SJM to have done that. I also, every time I'm mad at Nehemia, know that it's SJM's fault. But I think Nehemia really sucks here. Like, I don't like her actions at all. And I have yet to believe her to be a good friend to Celaena.
Yeah, I mean, and this is something that I think a lot of our listeners struggle with, is the relationship between Celaena and Nehemia. We saw that a lot in our listener thoughts episode, that people don't believe Celaena's reaction to Nehemia's death and how much she cares about Nehemia. I can't really explain it except for the fact that I'm assuming Nehemia is also 18. Like, when you're in a situation, there's only one other 18-year-old female around you, she's probably going to be your only friend. And not because you like her, but because situation puts you 2 together. And I feel like, again, to your point, Nehemia, this is not how we convince someone to the side of good. She's also 18. Like, how is she supposed to achieve that? That's a lot of responsibility for one person.
Celaena admires Nehemia because she's everything that she wants to be. Here's my question. If Celaena was not Aelin, if Celaena was truly just an assassin, would Nehemia waste any of this time? And I think that's kind of what my frustration comes into, where Nehemia has a motive in her befriending of Celaena. It is not without her saying, I need Celaena to step up and become Aelin and to become queen and to lead the rebellion. It has never not included that. So yeah, I think that it's really hard, because on Celaena's side, you have Nehemia, who she truly admires, right? Like, that's the princess that Celaena, I'm sure, wished that she could be. And on Nehemia's side, there's a lot of, I'm being your friend because I need you to do something. There's a lot going on in Nehemia's inner working from things that we discover in this book, next book, and later books, right? And it just shows how much Nehemia never came to Celaena with an open heart of pure, just friendship.
Yeah, I think it's a great point.
Yeah, thank you.
I have to end the chapter with a question, and that question is Celaena a coward? Quote, when Celaena said nothing, when she promised nothing, just as she always did when Nehemia spoke about these things, aka rebelling and helping oppressed people, the princess dropped the stick on the ground and quietly walked back to the castle.
It's hard, but I'm going to say what's in my head before I read my note. It's hard because Celaena is busy trying to keep them alive everywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
She is just trying to make sure her actions don't kill these two people in her life. There is not enough room in her mental capacity to save all the rebels. Now, morally, do we all have an obligation to assist those that are in need, to have time and consideration? Yeah, I mean, this comes from a place that, you and I live in America. We live extremely privileged lives, and we get to conveniently turn off the news when we hear about other places around the world who are absolutely being destroyed and need help, and we get to turn that part of our head off because we're busy with everything else, and sometimes it is a lot to take on. There is a social obligation, and there is a certain amount of social morality that we should try to do something. As someone who understands that sometimes it's so hard to be completely consumed, and knowing that throwing yourself completely in that could just take an extreme intense mental toll, it's hard for me to judge Celaena personally when it comes to that.
I completely agree. In this instance, Celaena's problems are big, right? She's doing things that could get her and her friends killed. I don't have that experience, but I do have the experience, like you're saying, Jack, of I have hard things I'm dealing with in my life. I'm privileged to deal with those things.
Yes.
And I am privileged that I can focus on them and not focus on, war happening around me or, people dying, people starving, etc.
And I think that just comes more from a point of, if anyone is judging Celaena, we're not even trying to save each other's lives, right? We're just trying to get by and live our life and just trying to let our own mental health survive. And that comes from a place of privilege, of being like, well, if that's my biggest concern, then damn. And Celaena has an even bigger, real concern, she's trying to make sure her friends don't die. So I think that comes from more of a place of, if anyone was judging Celaena, of thinking, wow, she should be really doing more. Absolutely, she should be doing more. But so should I. And so should you. And so should everyone else. You being not you, but I was looking at the list.
But also me.
Also me. We all have that obligation to do more. It's easy to say it. It's harder to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that Nehemia being the one to let go of the stick for Fleetfoot, again, Fleetfoot represents Celaena, so it's Nehemia kind of giving up on Celaena also, of just being like, I can't even entertain this conversation with you anymore, or entertain this playing fetch. I'm walking away.
Yep.
We're now in chapter 4. And I don't know.
You don't sound very happy about it.
I'm just flustered. It's just hard where I'm like, let's talk about war. And now I'm like a sweaty man. It's such a weird transition for me. Everyone, let's take a sip. Let's cleanse ourselves.
Yeah, there we go.
We start chapter 4 and we're in Chaol's point of view, and Chaol and Celaena are off to a nice morning run. Quote, the chill morning air was like shards of glass in his lungs. His breath clouded in front of him. They bundled up as best as they could without weighing themselves down, mostly just layers of shirts and gloves. But even with sweat running down his body, Chaol was freezing. I love it because of the contradiction that we get between the way that he's cold versus the way Celaena's cold. So the way that he's cold is, it's nice in his lungs, it's sweating, it's freezing. Oorah, right? And then Celaena, we have, quote, Celaena was freezing too. Her nose was tipped with pink, color stood high on her cheeks, and her ears shone bright and red. It's kind of cute. It's almost like she's blushing. So, and this is all from Chaol's point of view. So he was like, there are knives in my lungs and I am brutally freezing out here. And he's like, but she's kind of cute. And I think that there's something about it where there's a girlishness to it. Again, she's blushing. It's sweet.
again, because this is from Chaol's point of view, he's also observing how Celaena's running. And this is a breadcrumb, but also a marker for us to remember how hard that first run with Chaol was for Celaena in Throne of Glass. Quote, she kept up with him easily now, noble as a stag bounding through the wood. Sometimes he found it immensely hard not to watch her, to watch the way she moved. Now we know the stag reference indicates her true heritage. Stag reference, true heritage. We also are being reminded of how far Celaena has come. She is now graceful. She is, I was going to say like a gazelle, but no, she's like a stag. And also, by the way, if you weren't clear on this, Chaol's into her.
I also think it's important to note that the first comparison of Celaena to her home, to her identity, is actually from Chaol, who's going to be the first person and only person in this book that she actually tells her true identity to. So, and the fact that there's like the start of the book versus the end of the book is a very good mirroring kind of bookends to each other.
Good job.
Thank you.
Now, Chaol tries to ask Celaena a question, and in the process of asking, Celaena assumes Chaol is judging her because, like we saw from her perspective in chapter 2, she's feeling vulnerable and projecting that everyone doesn't like her, is like damning her for her choices. I actually liked what I wrote better. She's feeling vulnerable because of her secrets that make her seem morally reprehensible. Wow, Amy, good job. Quote, she whipped her gaze to him, then slowed. He didn't feel like stopping and might have kept running, but she grabbed his elbow and forced him to pause. Her lips formed a thin line. If you think passing judgment on me before I've had breakfast is in any way a good idea, Jack has a thought.
Yes. So he kind of shuts her down and is just like, hey, that's not that is not what I'm talking about. And we're going to get more into that. But I think it's really good to show that Celaena is ready for people to be judging her, because that's what we've known up until this point, is her thinking everyone is judging her. And we can see in this moment that it has literally nothing to do about her and what she's done. He is in his own head and he's trying to process it. And there's a certain amount of accuracy of Dorian's judgment, but at least with Chaol, there's nothing really going on with him.
You know what that means? Celaena's an unreliable narrator.
I know. Who would have thunk?
Who
would have
knew?
thunk?
So Celaena realizes Chaol's actually talking about how he feels because he killed Cain. Chaol observes that when she makes this realization, quote, the ice in her eyes melted completely. He hated the sympathy in her face, the understanding. Now, on one hand, I think that Chaol is projecting his own self-hatred for feeling or coming across weak. He doesn't want to be that vulnerable, even though he's willing to admit he just doesn't want the pity that comes with being viewed as weak. But I want specifically to focus on the fact that he views Celaena's gaze as ice or icy and not like stone. Maybe because I was bullied in middle school. Because I was called an ice queen for so long.
Aw, it's not your fault. You have a glorious resting bitch face.
I do have a glorious
It's what makes you so photogenic.
Unfortunately, women are often associated with being an ice queen when they do not come across the way men want them to come across, and they are not feminine enough, they're not accommodating enough. It's something often associated with despised women or women who do not fall in line, and it is a judgment of attitude. And so for Chaol to think Celaena is icy, to me has an underlying connotation of judgment on his part. And I feel that's different because if he had said a wall, she built he could see the wall being built up, right? Or her face turned stony. Those things imply to me an obstacle to overcome.
Yeah.
Something that you can climb over. Ice, yeah, you can melt it, but it doesn't have the gendered connotation. Stones don't have the gendered connotation of ice to me.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair to say. I can hear an eye roll from a listener somewhere, but I think it's fair because you have the terms ice queen. You don't have ice king, right?
Right.
And then you can, a lot of times, even in books, you'll see men being like they had a stony gaze. So I think it is fair to say there is a certain amount of genderization in this.
It's only because media and literature has done it, right?
Yeah.
our storytelling over the years is what has created this connotation. The only other note I had is, by the way, they're talking about death. So, of course, Celaena looks at the, quote, skeletal trees.
Going back to your, the male-female of it all, right? The genderization of ice versus stone. I think it's extra fair to say that because you can tell that Chaol's own masculinity is being challenged by this. Quote, he'd already seen and done enough in the name of the king. He fought men, hurt them, so he shouldn't even be having these feelings. And especially telling her, I feel like you can tell that there's a threat to his masculinity, that he is questioning himself as a man, as a leader. And the only person who can understand him is a woman. Not just the only person, because I'm sure there's other men in his guard who might have killed someone. The only one that he feels comfortable enough going to is a woman. I actually applaud Chaol for not flat out being like, it's a woman, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
He could have been a lot more toxic with this, and he is willing to go to her, and he is willing to talk about his feelings in chapter 4. So, good on him. But there are hints of that, just like there are hints of icy and stony.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And again, this all comes down to what society tells us.
Women can kill too. Statistically less likely, though.
Also, men should not feel threats to their masculinity by being vulnerable.
Not at all.
Or having feelings.
Extra not at all.
At one point, Breadcrumb, Chaol thinks, quote, if it ever came down to having to choose between his king and Celaena, he prayed to the word that he'd never be faced with that decision. We're in chapter 4. This is the second foreshadowing of what is to come, which, by the way, I forgot was barely halfway through the book.
Yeah,
it was towards the end.
It is funny where it's like, wow, I sure hope that there's no slithering monster in the library. Like, just like the most like things that are definitely going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Celaena, though, even Chaol's not sure which side he would choose if he had to choose between the king and Celaena. And while it does foreshadow the fact that he makes the quote-unquote wrong choice by withholding information, it also is foreshadowing he will go on a journey where this all changes inherently and permanently for him.
I really can't wait for it. I can't wait for that point. I also dread it because I know I'll be sad again when it happens. Because Chaol also thinks, quote, there was a line between them. The king might not think twice about their friendship, but crossing that line could be deadly for the both of them. It could make the king question his loyalty, his position, everything. This is the exact same mentality Celaena has. She thinks even earlier with her friendship with Nehemia. Does the king think that it's like he might tolerate this, but what happens if it becomes too much? Chaol is trying to protect Celaena as much as she's trying to protect him. There is a role that they both need to play in one another's safety that they feel like they're imposing, like saying like, I must be the one to save them. But it really is fascinating how much Nehemia's death cuts out Celaena's lack of empathy or even being willing to see herself in Chaol.
I want to stress the point that quote says. It could make the king question his loyalty, his position, everything. Chaol gave up his heritage, his inheritance, his lordship. Like, he's given up everything to be where he is right now. Those are high stakes for him.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, the king's an asshole, but Chaol has literally nothing else.
No, this is his life.
And, it's important to remember it because of the impact Celaena's will has on him later in the book. But it's also important to understand his motivations when he's like, I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill. If I think the king is lying to me about threats, which the king probably is.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't want to cause alarm where maybe he's being sensitive.
Or he also doesn't want to have a simple thing get back to the king that he did tell Celaena. Because doesn't the king tell him, don't tell anyone?
Yeah.
So it is one of those like, hey, I heard a rumor that Taylor Swift is going to be coming to this restaurant. That's silly. I haven't heard of any. Speaking of Taylor, tonight's the AMAs.
I know. I was just thinking that.
I'm like, where's my phone? I haven't checked anything. But it is very much I don't know, the double standards. They are reflected in one another. So much so.
Do you want to check your phone while I
Yeah,
take a
for
sip?
Taylor.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I do.
Great, because I can take another bite.
She's not at the AMAs.
There's a moment of great irony where Chaol thinks that he wouldn't betray Dorian by crossing a line with Celaena because Dorian still looked at her like he was in love with her. Were you not paying attention in Throne of Glass, sir? Because that is exactly what Dorian did to you.
Yeah.
He did not respect any boundaries because of what you wanted.
He never respected a damn thing, and now it's like, oh, my best friend who was turned down 3 months ago.
And again,
better friend,
more honorable. Like at his core, Chaol is honorable.
Yes, absolutely. When Chaol and Celaena get back to the castle, Celaena gets jealous because there are a number of women who line the path and they like watching because he takes off his shirt. I mean, he still has a shirt on underneath,
but he's sweaty and he's clingy.
Right? And she notices, quote, "They'd appeared along the path wearing even nicer dresses." And I think there's the double jealousy. One, jealous because these bitches be looking at Cole, right? Or Cole at Chaol. I don't know who Cole is. But I also think there's a jealousy that they get to wear dresses and they get to openly try to flirt with him. They get to express their interests. Celaena doesn't get to express her interests. She doesn't get to wear her dresses. She doesn't really get to flirt with him. And, that's more of her identity that's been stripped away.
Yeah, great point.
Thank you. Celaena meets Roland then, and instantly she gets bad vibes from him. Quote, "Roland smiled again. He smiled too much and too smoothly." There's different masks that people are wearing here, right? So you have Roland who's like, "I'm so charming." And then later on, we're going to get Asher and how he presents himself to Celaena and how Celaena presents herself to Asher, and how we're getting Roland who's like, I think there's even a line of like, he greets her and she goes, "The way that he said those words told Celaena how he treated women." I'm like, damn, girl, okay. She's really quick to judge him and to dismiss him. You might think she has good instinct. However, she doesn't have good instinct. We know that about Asher. We know that about a lot of things. Like, she sometimes has good instinct, sometimes she doesn't. I think that she immediately dislikes Roland because she sees that Chaol dislikes Roland.
Great point.
And her loyalty is with him.
Yeah, there's a point where she thinks, I just need a shovel. Like, she wants to bury him. She implies burying him alive. And I was just like, is he really that smarmy? He doesn't come across as oily to me. Is he full of himself because he's related to royalty? Yeah, okay, but
like, so is Dorian.
Right.
To me, it shows the subtlety of her loyalty to
Chaol. I think that's a great point.
Thanks.
The presence of Roland reminds us of Dorian's complacency because he wonders whether Roland has anything to do with his father that is bad. But all he ends up thinking in the end is he just doesn't want to know. Roland is harmless. Let him stay that way. I don't want to question it. Now, he's being willfully ignorant. He's also being gullible, I guess, just like Celaena has been, making assumptions or assuming the wrong things or not wanting to pursue information. But I have to keep reminding myself they're 18, 19, and 22. For this novel to work, they have to be that young.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the secrets that could have been picked up, a lot of the information that should be pursued but isn't, is because they're young and they are selfish. And that's okay because they're young.
I also this thought hit me. Dorian's the only one who's not being threatened by the king. Celaena has been threatened by the king. Nehemia has been threatened by the king. Chaol has not been directly threatened by the king, but his position is always threatened by the king. Dorian's the only one that the king hasn't been up to him and be like, "I'm gonna fucking kill her." You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna shut my mouth. Also, and the reason why I do point that out is because there are moments for him to explore when things are gross. And I think that this is a moment where Roland is gross. And I think Dorian could have done more to potentially explore that. And because Roland asks, quote, "Is she for your father's personal use or do other councilmen also employ her?" I know that we're talking about her assassin skills. It felt sexually dominating to me. And absolutely. I know I'm here to read for the feminist lens and that kind of is all within it, but is she for your father's personal use? That is not how you say, does your father only get to use her as an assassin? Like, that's
Yeah.
not like,
Yeah.
it's gross. And while Dorian does shut it down, but he shuts it down with a joke. Like, he
Mm-hmm.
tells him, why? Do you have someone else you plan to kill?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the way that someone who is curious to explore shittiness of other people is willing to shut them down. You know what I mean? There's
Right.
more he could have done.
Right. I agree. We then see Celaena, who has been out and about town spending all of her assassin salary. She re-enters her room carrying a bunch of things, including, quote, lugging hat boxes, colorful bags full of perfume and sweets. These things are all excess. They are not things that are necessary to survive. And I bring that up because we see Celaena embracing the lavishness that the money can afford, of the privilege of living in the palace and having access to these things. And in its own way, even though this is who Celaena is, this is who she was when she was an assassin before Endovier, it's also a version of complacency and selfishness. In this moment, in my mind, she is no different than Dorian, who doesn't want to pursue information, who doesn't want to put his cousin down in a more obvious way.
Yep. Celaena also buys shoes, hats, tunics, dresses, jewelries, weapons, baubles for her hair, and books and books and books. Now, I think there's a reason why Celaena leans in more to the books than anything else right now. And I think it's because she doesn't really have the opportunity to wear the dresses, the hats, the baubles. She can't do any of that, right? So she's embracing what she can do without judgment or danger. So I think that because there's going to be a lot of conversation about books and how much she reads and everything. And I think that there's more purpose in her reading here than just like, I love books, Even when Celaena goes shopping, like we finally see her in a dress. It's because, quote, dressing nicely guaranteed her the best service in whatever store she visited. There's not a moment where she gets to be like, I get to look nice today. And that's what I want.
Right.
And we saw that in book 1, right? We saw her be like, I am going to wear a pretty dress and everyone can suck it. And that's not what we're getting here. It's like, I finally get to wear a pretty dress and there is going to be reason, meaning, and motive behind it. Dorian comes to pay Celaena a visit in her room, and he hasn't been there since they essentially broke up. And I think it's important that the first time her and Dorian talk is when she's back in a dress, because again, Dorian was the one who pointed out that she never wears dresses anymore. She's always in that unforgiving black. And while I could say that it's something like it shows that she's back in her identity, she feels more like herself, that like maybe he sees the true her. It really feels like he gets to make the move when he is not threatened by her.
Right. And when she looks like an assassin, he's threatened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Celaena does deal with some jealousy when it comes to Dorian. He even talks about how, like is flirting with other women. And she says that she hates the idea of it, but she knows it's unfair. And she even remembers, quote, she crossed her arms, remembering how he smelled, how his lips had tasted. And it's awkward. It is awkward when you're when you're hanging out with an ex or something and you're just like, yeah, we've seen each other naked. Like, it is the weirdest thing. Like, anytime I've hung out with any ex, it's just like, oh, you were there,
Yeah.
What was it? Like, you and I hung out years after with the guy that I was first intimate with. And it is funny where it's like, we all know here that I had sex for the first time with this guy. Like, this is a secret we all know. And we're just here chilling, having dinner. It's a very surreal thing. And Celaena's never had to do that with anyone, like, because Sam is dead.
Right.
It is the weirdest thing to be with someone and knowing that you shared intimacy with them. Promises were said, oaths were taken, whatever you want to say. And they're like, you were inside, like a lot of weird things. And then just to see them normal. So I really feel like this is a very normal thing to do when you're just trying to figure it out and be like, I don't know how to deal with you. And it doesn't mean that she likes him. Again, reflecting on those things does not mean she has feelings.
Right. But despite that, she does think, she misses him. She misses talking to him.
Yep.
She misses these things, but it's obviously more platonic than it is romantic.
Absolutely. Still, though, Celaena kicks him out and she can't deal with her own complicated feelings towards him, who is the son of the man who killed her family, her entire kingdom, and it wrecks her. Quote, alone in the foyer, Celaena clenched and unclenched her fists, suddenly disgusted with all the pretty packages on the table. She feels so disgusted with the purchases, which is money from his dad, and also represents her own desires. And she feels disgusted with wanting the things that she wants. And even if she desires a friendship with him, how can she be friends with Dorian when his dad is who he is?
Yep. I just want to read a couple of notes to add to what you're saying, Jack.
Okay.
Celaena thinks at one point, quote, being friends with Dorian wasn't something she was certain she could actually do. Not when he would always have that gleam in his sapphire eyes, not when he was the son of the man who gripped her fate in his hands. But in the 2 months since she'd ended whatever had been between them, she'd often found herself missing him. Not the kissing and flirting, but just him. I think that this is really important and speaks back to our theme because, like Chaol drawing an imaginary line between him and Celaena is drawing an imaginary line between her and Dorian. She wants that friendship, just, Chaol wants intimacy with Celaena, but they feel like to cross that line would be a bad thing. And I think that explains why Celaena all of a sudden is like, leave, I don't want you here.
Yeah.
Because it feels a little out of character given that she was just like remembering how much she likes him. And so when she's like clenching her fists and disgusted with the pretty packages, to me, it is a projection of her own feelings that she's disgusted with herself because she did lie to Dorian. To tell him to leave, it's not because she doesn't want to be friends with him. It's because
she feels like she can't.
She feels like she can't. And on some level, it's not like Dorian's coming across as genuinely wanting to be friends. Like, he does come across as still wanting more.
Yep. Yeah. He's got those longing puppy eyes.
Yeah, he does. I'm taking a sip. We now move into chapter 5, and if you didn't catch on, there's a theme of power in this novel that is misinformation, which is Celaena's specialty. We see it plainly in how Celaena handles tracking Archer Finn. She fakes being a messenger and goes to several houses claiming to have a delivery, only to find that that's not the house she intended to go to, and then she, quote, feigned embarrassment of getting the wrong house, asked whose house it was, chatted up the servant a bit, and then went on her way. Celaena is in her element. The pretending, the lies, that it all comes easily to her. That is why lying and keeping secrets is her default solution to problems. We see it with her aiding the rebels. We're going to see it again throughout the series. This is the only thing she knows because she has been keeping a secret about her identity since she was 8 years old. It's worked, for 10 years. Why not keep going? I feel like we're also reminded why lying and keeping secrets is important. Celaena keeps being reminded that she lost Sam. And had she not been honest with Sam, if she had kept him at a hand's length away or arm's length away, maybe he wouldn't be dead. That's my interpretation of this.
Yeah.
Therefore, getting back into her assassin element is a double-edged sword. It's also a strong reminder of all that she's lost, even though she's very good at being an assassin. Quote, it felt like she'd never left Rifthold, as if she might look over her shoulder and find Sam Cortland crouching behind her. But Sam is dead, and try as she might, Celaena Sardothien will be dead soon too, if not dead already. Celaena is dead in Dorian's eyes. Celaena has not accepted the fact that she can't be Celaena anymore.
Yep.
But we are starting to kind of see the signs that she can't hold on to all the threads, and she's not going to be able to return to what she once was before Endovier.
And you just have to keep asking yourself, like, how much is this nostalgia going to help or hurt her while she's in the city? Is it going to pull her more into the past? Is it going to make her want to not push forward and not be her true identity, not be Aelin and not try to find the rebels? Like, there's a lot of things that's keeping her in the past that's not letting her move forward. Maybe Nehemia should have focused on that than killing herself. I'm just saying. Celaena being back in her city and thinking about her origins, we can see how much she's struggling with her true identity. Quote, part of her wondered whether whatever truth she'd uncover about this rebel movement and the king's plan would destroy her too. would destroy her too. Her hopes, her dreams would destroy this potential of who people think are like people are trying to rebel. Because there's that moment where I think in book 1 where someone mentions rebellion and she's like, oh, rebellion against the king. Like she does want that. She will never admit it and she doesn't want to be a part of it. But a part of her would love rebels to come around and knock the king away.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Celaena then is studying in Chaol's bedroom. It's very intimate. It's like, you know, just like I'm laying around on the couch while you're doing anything. And I love like the way that it's described because she's sitting on the couch and then her legs are over the leg or over the arms of the couch. And then she's leaning on it. Like she's totally made herself at home here.
Yep.
And I think that's because her space was a space between her and Dorian. It was a place that he would come and visit and have talks and long conversations with her. And there needs to be a separation of that. She needs to be in Chaol's space to have that time with him. And a little bit more about his room I want to get into. Quote, his 4-poster bed was decorated with a rather old and faded crimson duvet. Remember what we were saying in book 1, how red is often associated with the king. And here we are getting in this book how red is faded. And you can compare that to Chaol's growing distrust of the king.
I think excellent point.
Yeah, I feel like I made all my good points this episode. Expect mediocrity from here on out.
Oh, okay. Well,
Okay.
you're doing fabulous for a first episode.
Thank you.
And I will lower my expectations for the future.
As should everyone. Thank you.
I love this idea that all of Celaena and Dorian's intimate moments were in her room. Therefore, for her to have the same level of intimacy with Chaol, she needs to be in Chaol's room. We also have to remember Chaol goes to her room often, but that is where he is captain of the guard and she is assassin. That's where they talk about training. That's where they talk about the competition. That's where they debrief after meetings. So I love that they're in this smaller enclosed space. You can't go from one room to another. And it's his because Celaena is choosing to be there. And it's just, I'm not saying she's desperate. They both really want this.
She craves them.
But she craves it.
Yeah.
So as Celaena is studying, she brings up quite casually Rorik Farren, and she asks Chaol what he knows, and Chaol reveals that Rorik Farren, who is a crime lord, is dead, was killed by Wesley, Arobin Hamill's bodyguard, who is now also dead because Arobin probably killed him as well. Like earlier in the chapter, Celaena is being reminded of her past. This is the moment she chooses to tell Chaol about Sam Cortland, something she only told Dorian in the previous book. It's a clear signal to us as readers that Celaena desires vulnerability and desires to share that vulnerability with Chaol because it was only Dorian she shared it with before when she thought she was into Dorian.
The way that she told Dorian, if we remember correctly, it was kind of, I don't want to say a sparring match, but it wasn't a fun conversation. Like they were kind of going back and forth. And it was just something that she kind of snapped at him and finally told him about Sam. Versus right now, it's an exchange of hurts. Chaol is telling her how he hurt, and he even says it's nothing compared to what you went through. So, you know, not only is he exchanging emotional intimacy, but he's recognizing how much more she had suffered than him. And this isn't a revelation. This is an exchanging of emotional intimacy.
Such a great point, because Dorian walked into Celaena's bedroom unwelcome and unbidden.
Constantly.
When he learned about Sam, whereas Celaena is in Chaol's space, wants to be here, voluntarily tells him this.
Yes.
So it is a very distinct difference.
Yep. Chaol then, like we were saying, tells Celaena about the woman that he thought he loved, who betrayed him, and Celaena tells Chaol that his past love was a, quote, dumb girl. Celaena also referred to the ladies of the court as girls, the ones who were standing around watching Chaol, you know, be all sweaty, and she does call them girls, and there's a certain level of belittling when you reference women as girls. And before people are just like, what are we doing here? It's true. I think that as society, we call women girls very often. Hey, girls, how are the girls doing, or everything? And it's infantilizing. because we do not reference men as boys. If we do, it's often as an insult. Oh my God, these boys.
Yeah.
They're such
Yeah.
boys. And with women, I mean, you'll catch it even within yourself. It wasn't until I had a friend point out that she actively tries to call women after like a certain age. And, oh, there was this woman near me. Oh, I saw this woman the other day. And it's the same thing we would do with men. So I think that Celaena is doing the thing that a lot of people do by kind of putting the women down as girls. And it's poignant that Chaol tells her this, quote, "If I had any lady friends, I'd certainly extend the offer," talking about walking her to her room. "I'm not sure if you qualify as a lady though." And I'm not entirely sure with this still. I sat there, I looked at it, and I wasn't like, I know I don't really care for that because it's like, you're no lady type of joke, but she also is dismissing girls. So maybe it's like a joint dismissal of the feminine between girls and ladies, where they both get to dismiss the same thing and they get to understand that she's separate and different from both. Who knows? But I could not say it and have the feminist lens to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. Lady is used, it could imply so many different things. It could just be feminine, right? It could be women of court, because not sure you qualify as a lady implies to me, well, you're not a proper woman of court. You're just an assassin, right?
Yep.
Ultimately, he's teasing her. They tease each other. They enjoy doing that. But I totally see your point of him potentially putting her down the way she puts other women down.
And I want people to know, this is me analyzing because it's in front of me, not because I'm thinking I made a good point. This is one of those things where sometimes it's in front of you, you highlight it and you see it, and you're not entirely sure where you stand with it, but like, you recognize it, you see it, and I guess I could interpret it this way. I feel like I made a lot of other good points that I stand by. This isn't one of those.
And with that, let's go into breadcrumbs and broomsticks. So, for those of you who are new, breadcrumbs are the things we see throughout the chapters that we think foreshadow or lend itself to clues about something else.
Broomsticks is what we ask our listeners about, so we'll get into that. But let's start with some breadcrumbs. In chapter 2, while in the presence of the king, quote, "The king waved a hand at her." Oh, also, this is going to all the spoilers happen here, in case you guys forgot.
Spoilers happen here.
Yeah. So let me restart that. While in the presence of the king waves, quote, "The king waved a hand at her, the obsidian ring on his finger gleaming in the afternoon." We know that the ring affects those who are wearing it. So why do we as readers think that it is not affecting him and that he is not somehow controlled as well?
Well, because I think this is the first time we've seen a ring on his finger.
Yeah, but we don't come to the realization that he's actually controlled for a while.
Yep, it's true. In chapter 3, Cain, quote, whispered her... Oh, I'm going to take that away since we already talked about it. In chapter 3, Celaena and Nehemia are talking about Archer Finn as a rebel. Nehemia says, quote, "Surely no one would be that bold. The rebels hide out in the mountains and forests and places where the local people can conceal and support them. Not here. Rifthold would be a death trap." It's ironic since Nehemia came to Rifthold specifically for that reason, to work with rebels, one of whom is Archer Finn.
In chapter 4, Chaol offers to help Celaena with Archer Finn. Celaena thinks if he did get involved, then it would complicate things. Actually, it would completely blow your cover. How do they not think that people will recognize the captain of the guard? Like, at all.
Again, they're young.
Yeah, I know.
In chapter 5, when Celaena goes to the library and spots a hooded figure outside the library doors, quote, "Some ancient primal part of her reacts." This ancient primal aspect of Celaena will continue to make its appearance known throughout the novel, and I think it hints at her true heritage.
Let's get into some broomsticks. I see you put some screenshots, but did you open the DMs? Because there was a couple people who DM'd. People love sending longer messages.
I did not open the DMs.
Okay, let's go through these and then I'll open some DMs.
So for our first question that we posed to our listeners on our Instagram, so if you want to participate in the future, check out our Instagram. We asked our listeners, what do you think of the start of Crown of Midnight? Do we learn the truth about Celaena's assassinations too early? I will say most everyone was like, nope, loved it. I thought it was great. We need, and rightly so. A lot of our listeners were like, no, it's a YA. You need to be upfront about this kind of stuff. We need to like the heroine.
But there were a fair amount who thought, no, I never thought she was actually doing them. I was never convinced. Like there were some people, no, I quote, someone saying, no, I think it's too early, sets up the anticipation to finding out when it happened. Like there are a fair amount of people who thought that it did happen too soon and that it does ruin someone. I think other people are really doubling down on the loving it. I will read someone's message.
Can I read
Oh,
one particular
yeah.
note, which I thought was a good point? They said, I think it's just fun to be privy to info that no one else is privy to. It's the only time in the series.
Yep.
Which is so fair.
True. It's so true. That's very true. A listener says, they sent a DM, I think it's important to consider the audience. This is a novel written for young adults. So with that in mind, I think it was important for SJM to convey upfront that Celaena was not out murdering innocents. It also sets the stage for how crafty she can be in finding workarounds. In this case, it's fooling the king. And of course, later in Queen of Shadow, we see her up the ante in working around Arobyn's will to provide herself with a fortune, with a fortune. Basically, by being upfront in Crown of Midnight, we learn quickly that Celaena has strong morals and is clever. I think the morals thing is important to get.
I think it's the morals that's the most important.
Yeah.
The second question we asked, are the strain dynamics between Celaena, Chaol, Dorian, Nehemia believable or awkward?
A lot of people say awkward.
So when I looked, and granted it was a little bit earlier today, I felt like it was like pretty divided.
Yeah.
Some people were like, oh, it's believable because let's be
teenagers.
Real. Right.
They're like high school.
Right. Exactly. I've been on the outside of this kind of thing and it is awkward to watch, but it's believable.
Yeah.
Someone did say Nehemia. Someone went on a Nehemia rant.
I know, and I love them that. I was like, "That's not what we're talking about." We'll ask about Nehemia in future. We're going to do this more often, guys, where we're asking listeners this before we record.
Someone said, I think there is some dysfunction with the story due to the earlier versions. That's interesting.
Agreed. I agree, because this is so pulling towards Chaol is OTP. Yeah, one true pairing. Dorian at one point was OTP. All right, we have another DM.
Go ahead.
I actually need more space typing this one. I think the dynamics are awkward, but also believable. I think we need to feel the dynamics aren't quite right because none of these relationships are, quote, real, or at least not the kinds of relationship that have those characters are meant to have / end up having with each other. The only real relationship that is built towards the end is trust with Chaol to rebuild a friendship later, and the friendship / fellow ruler relationship built with Dorian. I don't know how I feel about that. That being that there is larger groundwork for the later 7 books happening in this book. I think partially, yes. This listener was saying like it set up groundwork for them to becoming friends later. I agree. Yeah. I think it's groundwork for them to become lovers again, like love, such a cringy thing, but them being in relationship again. I think that's the groundwork. I'm not entirely convinced that when she wrote this book, she knew where this was going to go.
Yeah, I do agree with that. You know, I'm kind of divided on this, and we'll get to this in the question we're about to ask ourselves. I just want to read one more quote, and then I think we move on to the question, because I think my reaction...
I have one more. You say it, and then I have one more I just caught.
Sure. Someone says, I've always felt that the relationships are a little awkward, pushing the love triangle a little hard.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a fair amount of people who said, like, it feels off. When I reread it later in time, I was like, no. Yeah, a number of people were just like, this feels almost forced, like we're rehashing the same thing all over again. Someone did say, as someone who was on the outside of a similar situation with their friend group, it's believable, to which I say, hey, send me a DM about that. I want to know.
Tell me more.
Give me the tea. I want to know more about that. But yeah, it's pretty divided, and it was brave, I think, of SJM she can't just leave it, right? Because it like you can't just abandon this thing that you started. Like, it's not like it's suddenly resolved in those 2 months that we are off camera.
Yeah.
But I do think it does a fair amount of job of letting go the love triangle pretty early.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to ask ourselves the question we asked at the beginning.
Okay, ask me.
And then I have thoughts, but I will let you respond first. So the question we asked ourselves at the start of the episode is, do we believe the opening of Crown of Midnight is adequately set up by the preceding events in Throne of Glass, as well as the status of everyone and every relationship?
Yes. Okay, now I want to hear your thoughts.
I remember the first time I read the series, I was Team Dorian when I read Throne of Glass because how can I not be?
Yeah.
He's the hot prince. I was shocked at the way the relationship with Chaol developed and how much Chaol was at the forefront at the end of Throne of Glass. But mind you, it was to me, the pendulum swung really, really far for Dorian and then kind of came back to neutral, where we see both Dorian and Chaol.
Yep.
I feel like at the start of Crown of Midnight, we are already on the opposite end of the pendulum.
Yeah.
All the way up to Chaol.
Higher than ever before. Like Dorian never even reached this point.
Yeah, exactly. And so I can see both sides in that it might feel like a leap for the relationship between Celaena and Chaol, especially if you weren't paying attention to the Celaena and Chaol relationship in book 1, which was me the first time I read it. Having analyzed book 1, I'm now like, oh yeah, it was there the whole time. All it took was like Chaol killing Cain and Celaena going off and not being trapped in the palace anymore for Chaol's feelings to really present themselves.
Yeah. This book, I mean, Crown of Midnight and Throne of Glass are truly one book.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, and I don't say that as in like I know any inside information, like it was one book or something. I feel like I have to clump them together as one book in my mind because it sets it up so much for what's happening. And we start with Throne of Glass mid-action. She does a great job. That's what you're always supposed to do, right? Like things have already been moving. Celaena's been a slave for a year. There's a whole past story we don't know about. You know, it's mid-action. What's hard about Throne of Glass, about Crown of Midnight, is that we're also mid-action, but I think people have perceived thoughts on how Throne of Glass ends. So the first time you're reading it, like I was like you, Amy, where I was like, Dorian, but Dorian, Dorian. And then you read this and you're just like, but Dorian, and you're kind of like missing some things there. The dynamics are all strained the way they need to be, and the dynamics are all intimate the way they need to be. Celaena's relationship with Dorian is strained. Her relationship with Nehemia is strained. Dorian's relationship with Chaol is absent. That's probably my only note, but it would make sense that it's absent, right? Like neither of them really want to face one another.
I mean, yes, and they didn't really actually spend a lot of time together in book 1.
Yeah, I'm not convinced they're friends.
Yeah, I really don't think they're friends.
We know they are. That is his best friend. They say they are. They say all these things. I don't think SJM has done a good job to this point showing us that friendship.
Yeah.
Rather than telling us, because that has been a tell not show.
Yeah. Now, I think we, from what I remember, see it more in Heir of Fire. But to me right now, they come across as two boys who were best friends at the age of 10.
Yeah.
And they've made no other friends since. So they are each other's default best friend, but they actually don't spend a lot of time together.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like to me.
And Chaol had to grow up and become captain of the guard, and Dorian got to be the prince that fucked around. Dorian only has become more serious since being dumped by Celaena.
Yep.
We talked about before last season that I think Dorian truly cares about Celaena. Maybe, you can even say loved her, but I don't think his true emotions came for her until really the breakup. And I don't think he knew how to care about her while in the midst of caring, because he still doesn't know how to get his head out of his own ass. And I think by the end of this book, we're going to really see a huge change in Dorian with that. And I'm excited to see his development happen. And that's because for the first time in his life, I think it actually has to do with him versus, trying to make things about himself. But it's like, oh, no, this thing is actually happening to me. And I don't like this.
I really don't want to be the center of attention.
Yeah. Like, wait a minute. I don't like this part. And now his life is in danger with his own dad because he doesn't know what his dad would do. So there's a lot of growing that happens with Dorian, but I'm personally think that that it all is set up nicely. It just so happens that the setup happens very quickly, like we start mid-action. And unless you are completely aligned with her, you are not going to be happy with that mid-action.
Yeah. And the benefit of reading it after the entire series has already been published is that you go from one book to another really quickly, so it doesn't feel as bad it doesn't feel like a jump.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if you could have that feeling if you're not in the reread.
Yeah,
I don't
agree.
know if anyone could go into it as peacefully. Maybe someone has. I'm sure there is some glorious person out there that has had that moment of clarity of like, oh yes, this makes total sense. But it's hard when you're just reading it for the first time and you have in your head who you think she should be with.
Yep.
Okay, so that was the first episode, guys.
Yay!
And we did it in 2 hours.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy. Tune in next week when we explore chapters 6 through 11 of Crown of Midnight.
We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. We would also love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a future mini episode or on a Patreon exclusive episode.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon or Venmo. You can also follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk. Bye.